Billions of dollars of international aid to Afghanistan are in jeopardy if Afghan President Hamid Karzai doesn't sign a security agreement with the U.S. before the end of the year. Karzai said he wouldn't sign anything before his terms are met. Monday night at dinner in the presidential palace, the American National Security Advisor Susan Rice delivered the Afghan president an ultimatum.
If the agreement isn't signed promptly, what I said to the president is we would have no choice. We would be compelled by necessity, not by our preference, to have to begin to plan for the prospect that we will not be able to keep our troops here because they will not be invited because the BSA will not have been signed. And then the nature of our partnership and the investments that we have made will be more difficult to sustain.
Yeah. To help explain the stalemate, the author of Afghanistan, A Political and Cultural History is Professor Thomas Barfield. He is director of Boston University's Institute for the Study of Muslim Societies and Civilization, where he joins us via Skype. Tom, thank you so much for being with us. I do appreciate it. I don't know if you can answer this question. You'll be able to take a stab at it. What do you make of Hamid Karzai? It seemed we had reached a deal. It seemed promising. The 3,000 or so member of tribal elders known as the Loya Jirga have approved this deal. Karzai indicated that he wanted the deal, and now he says he won't sign it. What is going on?
I think that's what Afghans would like to know. While Karzai's been a little bit erratic in the past, this extends even his boundaries on that, because the Loya Jirga that he called to confirm the decision actually instructed him to sign it, and they, speaking for the Afghan people, said they were on board.
What could he possibly be up to with this ploy, and would you call it a ploy?
I think it is a ploy, but he may see it as standing on principle. But he's brought up all kinds of issues that haven't really been significant before. It may well be because he fears being a lame duck president. There is going to be an election in April, that if he can extend this out, maybe he can be a central player up until that period of time. But it's very hard to read what his logic is behind this.
And even harder still is who would actually sign the agreement. If by some remote chance the U.S. agreed to wait until the election, he wouldn't be the one that would sign the agreement anyway. Isn't that right?
Well, if he says his successor should sign it, then presumably it would be his successor. But the fact is he acts as a representative of the Afghan state. We are not appealing to Hamid Karzai, the individual. Afghanistan is a sovereign state. Therefore, he's supposed to act on behalf of a sovereign state, not as sort of an old monarch whose country is his own patrimony.
Is there a chance that he doesn't fully appreciate the ramifications of this behavior? For instance, the billions of dollars of aid that are in jeopardy if he doesn't sign this?
I think he understands that, but I think he misunderstands his situation. He believes that the Americans will do anything to get this, and I don't think he really understands that the politically popular decision for the Obama administration is the zero option, that is to get out. While this would not be good for Afghanistan or the United States, certainly President Obama would not have to defend himself against such a decision domestically.
And let's talk about that. If he did not sign this deal and we move forward with the plans of, we being the United States, move forward with the plans to pull out all troops by the end of 2014, talk about what those consequences would be.
Well, the consequences are great because the military does a lot of planning, so that even if 6 months later a successor were to change his mind, in some senses, the train would have already left the station. The bigger problem is that every other country that's a member of the coalition, including all our NATO allies, look to the United States to take the lead. If the United States is taking the lead, so are all of our allies. Even if someone comes in April and says, well, I'm in favor of this, it may be too late to reverse course.
And indeed, if perhaps that point of no return was reached, would the Afghan government, would their forces be able to maintain peace in that country?
They would find it quite difficult. One of the problems is they might be able to do it militarily if they have outside help. But the real difficulty, which I think the Afghan Loya Jirga recognized, it's not the question of international troops in the country. the international troops are sort of a down payment so the other countries are willing to fund the Afghan army. If all the troops are gone, I think the incentive to provide the huge amount of aid that finances the Afghan military might evaporate as well.
And might we also see a scenario very similar to what we have seen in Iraq, where the unrest, the civil unrest within that country has gone back to, in some cases, even greater than before we went into that country?
The Afghans have experience with this, unlike the Iraqis. They had a very vicious civil war in the 1990s that brought the Taliban to power. The great fear among many Afghans, many of whom have known peace for the past 10 years, the great fear is the world will abandon Afghanistan and it will fall back into the civil war that devastated the country in the 1990s.
Who do you think might be influencing Karzai? One of the new demands that has surfaced is the release of detainees from Guantanamo Bay that are Afghani, and they are reportedly members of Taliban or acted with the Taliban. So who do you think, if you think anybody is influencing him and making demands like that?
I think Karzai, at the end of his term, wants to act like an Afghan national hero. So by making these demands, if he can get them done, it would prove that he was not an American proxy. I think to some extent this has much more to do with how he sees himself and his reputation than it does with any outside influence.
Well, speaking of him individually, are you surprised by this? I mean, put this behavior in context to his behavior in the past.
His behavior in the past has always been erratic, but on the other hand, when push came to shove, he usually made the pragmatic decision. The great fear now, particularly even by the Afghan leader of the Loya Jirga, was we all agreed to this, and the head of the Loya Jirga said, if he refused to sign it, I'm going to leave the country. And he's a very prominent Afghan leader. The fact is, I think he scared the Afghans, that many of whom feel this is not a negotiating ploy. This is driving the car over the cliff.
Yeah, indeed. Dr. Thomas Barfield, I want to thank you very much for your expertise and perspective.
Thank you.